Welcome to the Learning Experience Ops Show, where we talk about making learning better that's future ready. I'm Jason Gorman, the founder and CEO of Jackrabbit Learning Experience. The whole purpose of this show is to talk with people who come at our work from different angles, with different backgrounds, different vantage points, because from where I sit, that's how you actually get a feel for where we are right now and where we're headed. And a lot of my guests have spent their careers inside education, really deeply immersed in it. But my guest today is a little different. He comes out of data science and AI, and that background gives him an unusual window into this very moment that we're all living through. But there's something else. He spends his time convening people from every corner of education. K-12 teachers, university leaders, ed tech founders, policymakers, all in the same room. So he isn't just watching the conversation about AI and education. He's standing in the middle, listening to all of it at the same time. And that gives him an especially interesting read on the zeitgeist. And that's exactly what I want to talk about today. My guest today is Hamit Hamutcu. Hamit is the founder of AIx Ed, an event and community platform that brings together all the folks that I mentioned a moment ago to make sense of what AI means for education. He came to that work after a long career in data and AI rather than education itself, more than 20 years across industry and consulting, including building and leading a global analytics practice, and most recently serving as senior advisor and director at the Institute for Experiential AI at Northeastern University, where he led programs to help organizations build their data and AI skills. He also co-edits the industry column at the Harvard Data Science Review. Hamit, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for having me, Jason.
Yeah, thanks for doing it. Well, let's get warmed up with a couple lightning round questions. These are just quick to get us going, get us sort of stretched out a little bit. All right, so first question, what is the 30-second elevator pitch about what you do?
Yeah, I think you made a great intro for that answer. What I've been trying to do for the last several years is trying to find and create value right at the intersection of academia and industry. I think there needs to be a lot more. And that definition of what's that, a lot more. The answers that I've been working on are for people to talk, to collaborate, to jointly work on projects. And I'm trying to facilitate that. AIx Ed is certainly a great example of it. I'm really happy that, we can convene this kind of unique group of people. My work at Harvard Data Science Review is exactly that. Can we, create more opportunities for industry and academia to collaborate from a content perspective? So there's benefit to both sides. And anything I do, and I've done for the last several years, and even looking into the next one or two at least, is trying to stay right at that kind of sweet spot, of academia and industry.
And I'm curious just to get like a little glimpse into your origin story here. What was there an event or a moment that really inspired you to do what you're doing now?
I wish I had, a great story there, but it's really, really simple in my case. My roommate in graduate school, he signed me up for an interview at FedEx. I didn't even know. So I ended up interviewing. I got the job. That got me into data analytics, completely by chance. So it's really a luck, I guess, and a circumstance that put me on this trajectory. But I'm extremely happy to be on that, on that path. I haven't looked back. I haven't looked for an alternative. I've been just coming at it from different angles over the last 25 years or so.
In your work in general, when you're really locked in, what are the things that you're doing when you're just completely focused in a flow state?
I think what gets me in the zone is when I'm piecing things together.
Yeah.
Not really thinking or brainstorming. That's not what I mean. But, connecting the conversations I've had, the bookmarks, the notes, and bringing it together to create some structure out of it. It could be, it could be a new product idea. It could be a new, event idea or whatever it is. But can I kind of connect a lot of these dots that I've been, collecting in my brain, bring them together, and then create something out of it that is greater than, the parts, right? So that's, I think, is what focuses me most.
One question in two parts. What are you most anxious about for the future, and what are you most hopeful about?
I don't have a lot of anxieties. I don't know, kind of a naive answer, but I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of ups and downs, but I think my working assumption is that things will work out, in the end. So really not much. I mean, I just try to think of different scenarios and then, prepare myself and people I work with, accordingly. In terms of hope, I of course share the concerns, that everyone or a lot of people have been really worried about AI and its impact on all of that. But I mean, I feel like there's still a lot we can do as humans, on how that story unfolds. So as I said, I think short term is definitely going to be maybe a bit blurry and a bit nerve wracking. But I think in the end, we are going to find great ways of using this new powerful technology to our benefits.
That's great. And this could be about work. This could be about something completely outside of work. But what is a skill you're trying to learn right now?
I'm not sure about a skill, but as you said, I'm fairly new to education, right? I mean, I talk to these people who've been for decades, in the different domains. They know this inside out. They've been in all kinds of different organizations and subsectors, etc. So I am trying to just observe as much as I can, especially about the educational infrastructure. How the different parts work together. I mean, K through 12 and higher ed, complete different beasts. Being at Northeastern really gave me a lot of insights, but I know that I'm still scratching the surface. So I try to make every conversation, including this, a learning opportunity. So I hope they will add up to some, something greater and put me in a position where I'm able to do more than I'm able to do now, say a year or two from now.
Well, that's the perfect segue into my next question. So as you're having all of these conversations, and I should say I've been to both. You've had two conferences. I've been to two conferences. They are both incredible. I learned so much. I met a lot of people, made a lot of good connections, really felt each time like I left with a better sense of the kind of pulse of the kind of where people are and what is happening and what people are thinking about and what's important and what to pay attention to. It's very, really useful. So thank you for those.
No, sure.
As you reflect back on the conversations that happened at the conferences, but also around your work with the conferences, what feels important to you right now about the conversations we're having about AI in education?
I mean, one thing that was very clear to me, in the two conferences you mentioned, they were basically 6 months apart, right? So the first one happened November 2025, the second May 2026. I was genuinely surprised how much it was different, the nature of the conversations. I mean, you certainly expect progress, right? I mean, the AI technology is moving fast, so you do expect, I guess, some fast progress on the side of implementers and educators, etc. But it was very, very clear. There was a lot more maturity in the way people were approaching, the topic, a lot more confidence, many more examples on how people have used it. I mean, still a lot of questions, certainly. But like I said, I think 6 months ago, we wouldn't have had half the stories or some of the best practices, etc., that we heard, last month, in May. So I think the level, the maturity of the conversation is what I would say. The nature of the conversations was, I mean, day and night, maybe a little too much, but it really, really was a significantly more advanced nature of conversation.
I have to say, I'm going to co-sign that. I felt like in the November event, there was still every presenter obviously knew what they were talking about, was 100%, had answers, had interesting points of view. But the vibe in the room, the conversations I had with other people was still a sense of disorientation, that we were in a disoriented moment, people still trying to understand what is even happening and what exactly are we supposed to do. And a month ago, the sense was maybe we still don't know, but we have jobs to do. And we now have a sense of how to get some traction. And we are at least doing specific things to get there. So I really felt that even more than hearing it, it just felt very different as a group.
No,
So
I fully agree.
Yeah,
fully agree.
So I mentioned before, all the people that you bring together, which is very, very diverse, both the speakers and the attendees. So I met teachers and university provosts and ed tech founders. There was a state senator there. There was a secretary of education was there. There was a head of a large AI, mature AI organization called CSAIL. Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah.
Yep.
Just in a
from MIT.
couple days.
Yep.
Lots of amazing people in the same room over a 2-day period. So as you think about all of these great folks that were in the room, what would you want to communicate to somebody who's listening to this podcast about what you see? What would you want learning professionals to understand? If they weren't able to get there, what would be a takeaway or a couple takeaways that represents the kind of diversity of thought?
Yeah. First of all, I'm really happy you feel that way because that's exactly what we were aiming to do, right? Bring people from different parts of education. And the reason why I think that's really important, and of course, if someone was there in person, like you were, I'm glad to hear that it was clear. But for people who are not there, I would definitely want to highlight that there's a lot to learn from each other. Despite the fact that it might look like our environments, our challenges, our classrooms, our environments might be quite different from each other. One thing I learned over a couple of decades of management consulting is, we would walk into, say, a bank, and they would say, "Oh, we're very different. We're very unique. Like we're nothing like the other banks."
Yeah.
Or you talk to a bank, and they would say, we mentioned maybe a work from, say, a telecommunications company. And they say, "Oh, our industry is extremely good." And of course they are. Banking is different from telecommunications. Yeah. But there's so much more common to it, right? Especially when you're dealing with technology, its impact, the barriers, human nature, change management, adoption. There are just a lot of things that are common. And I think in education, we should not be creating even more silos. Like, oh, this is the K through 12 room, and that's where we discuss K through 12 challenges. Of course, there are challenges that are unique to K through 12, but I think a K through 12 professional being in the same room with a higher ed person, an ed tech person, a policymaker, an NGO leader, I think there's a lot of benefit in making those conversations. So what I would say is, of course, hopefully, people will show up, in the next event. But if they're not able to, I would definitely consciously, find ways to connect with people, not only in my immediate environment and learn from them, which is certainly useful, but also, kind of expand that network of people that you talk to, that you learn from, because I think there's a tremendous amount of value in that.
Yeah, there's a real danger. So I spent the first 10 years of my career in higher education, and then I went into consulting. Similar to yours. If we just take higher education in particular, it can become an echo chamber. And my experience at the AIx Ed conference is that it wasn't. We were all just there hearing things that we might not have heard otherwise. We would never have the opportunity to hear otherwise. It was great to have that, the potential for so many rich conversations. But even so I am curious, are there places across education where you think the energy in certain spots is higher and the gains are a little bit better, whereas in other corners of the education landscape, maybe not seeing the gains with AI use or maturity, and maybe the energy is a little lower around its adoption?
Yeah. I'd like to see, I'd love to see how you think about this because you were there, but, there's obviously a lot more action and application in thinking about or doing things differently on how we teach or how students learn, but maybe not so much on what we teach and what they should be learning, right? So, say tutoring or assessments or, so a lot of conversation about, how the classroom works, how, the teacher kind of operates, interacts with students, gives feedback, assesses, etc. So there's a lot of, I think, good conversation there and a lot of good examples. But maybe because of the uncertainty about what's happening in the job markets, are jobs disappearing, which ones, how are they changing, etc. I don't know if people are just blocking out kind of the noise there, or they're too worried and they're, kind of, I don't know, not maybe looking inwards and not wanting to think about that, which I understand, by the way. If there's so much uncertainty, how can you react to it? It might take a little time maybe for that feedback loop to work and for the job market to settle. etc. But I think there needs to be more conversation about also what to teach and from the student perspective, what to learn. I mean, there's obviously, people talk about durable skills and, things that will help students and people who are just entering the workforce ride any expected or unexpected turns in the, in how jobs, play out. But I feel like that, there's probably more.
Interesting. If you had a magic wand or a genie or something, and you could make, I don't know, a certain kind of curriculum compulsory, right? In K-12 or higher ed, or even at the workforce level, what would be the content you would want? What would you want people to be learning about right now?
I mean, I think anything that helps students use skills in a context, AI related or, technology related in general. I think those are really, really important because it gives them a chance to kind of take the first step in what will probably become their future and their career flow, right? Because if they're able to take that first step, then they'll be better equipped to take the second and the third. But if they're learning skills either in isolation, like, and not really in an applied manner or within context. So if I'm studying, say, marketing, yes, I mean, AI fluency, universities are investing a lot, into that. But that's being used in a marketing class in the way I solve marketing problems or business problems or design marketing actions. That's really, really critical. So the curriculum, the syllabus needs to integrate that really intimately, not superficially, but intimately, which takes time. So again, I'm not saying that, why hasn't this happened? I mean, there has been probably enough time, but I think that's what we should be striving towards and that will change, right? I mean, we can't be using the same type of stuff for several years because that will change. But again, from a faculty perspective, if they're able to take a step now towards that, taking that second step when things shift again will be much easier if they wait much longer now, right?
Because they could be laying the tracks for the principles, which may not change that much over time, even as the technology does change.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
In my research for our conversation, I found out something interesting about you. So 20 years ago, it looked like you were kind of looking out across the data science world and saw that the same title might have meant 50 different jobs and that nobody could really agree on what the work even was. My understanding is that you co-founded an initiative to bring standards to the data science field. And I have to tell you, this sounds exactly like where learning professionals are right now. And this is certainly not an AI thing. This was true well before AI in our case. And I would say it's even more true now that AI has confused what we do. Maybe it has also in data science, but I'm curious, when you think about, maybe you could talk a little bit about that work and what you saw and what you were trying to do there. And I'm curious if you see any parallels with how how educators or learning professionals perhaps need some standardization or need some clearer way to think about our work so we can professionalize faster.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. Probably not quite 20 years, but it was a long time ago. I mean, the mainstream popularization of the data science profession or the title data scientist was our Business Review article. Tom Davenport, who's a friend and a colleague, was one of the authors. So they said it's data science is the sexiest job of the 21st century or something like that. So of course, when you say that, then everybody wants, or not everybody, but a lot of people want to become a data scientist. So the way I saw it at the time was, the only requirement for someone to be a data scientist was to change their title to a data scientist on LinkedIn, right? Because who is to say you're not? So that's kind of prompted that entire research study. I mean, we had, surveys, about 1,000 people, I've personally conducted dozens of interviews with hiring managers and data science managers, chief data officers, etc., to create a detailed taxonomy of what the skills should be at different levels for different functions, data scientist, data engineer, data analyst, what makes them different, and all of that. So we don't find ourselves in a situation where in the same company, this is an actual example where two people are calling themselves data scientists. One of them has like an undergraduate degree in business and some marketing experience. The other one has like a chemical engineering degree and a PhD in something, right? So they could be both great resources for the company, but they probably are not doing the exact same thing. So we should not be called. So that was, there was a study that actually, that was kind of my first real experience of working right at that intersection of academia and industry, because we had to be very rigorous in the way we were approaching it. But it was an industry challenge we were trying to solve. And, that got published at Harvard Data Science Review. That was my also original connection to the publication, et cetera. So I think taxonomies, are important. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it. But we're now at a stage where I think even the taxonomy that I worked so hard and diligently on is mostly irrelevant, or you cannot really apply it because the job itself has changed dramatically, right? So certainly I'm no expert of your profession and the community that you're part of, the learning professionals, but any kind of standardization, especially for skills that are maybe more durable, certainly helps, because it gives people kind of a target states. It provides trainers with more robust frameworks that they can work with. It also provides for assessments, either for jobs or for education, etc. So I'm all for it, but I think you also should recognize the fact that we're at a stage where things are moving really, really fast. So we should be prepared to throw out a taxonomy out the window if necessary.
So it could be data science, it could be learning professions, it could be anything right now, because everything is changing quickly for most people. How should we think about what to, as my wife likes to say, set a coffee cup down on it? Like you don't want to put your drink down on something that's going to move, right? So what is the thing that's not, is there something when we're thinking about the taxonomy of our work where we can say, here are the things that are really worth investing in over the long term? Then there's another category of things that are not as durable, but are still necessary, that we are just going to need constant PD. How did you suss those things out in your work, and what would be your advice to people as we're thinking about progressing through our careers?
Yeah. In data science, this framework that we came up with was basically, it looked like a periodic table. Right. So we had elements, right? And each element corresponded to a particular, skill. And we had groupings of elements, like in a real, periodic table, right? And some of them were about tools, right? So we had Python, R, Excel, so different tools to process, to analyze, data. We had some core skills like math and statistics, right? Probability, linear algebra. So a lot of different types of really fundamental skills that underlie any of these professions. We also had the ability to define a problem, to break it down into pieces, and then to build some kind of code using whatever tool that you pick. So the first category is has changed dramatically, right? The tools and the technology, etc. Some of the understanding of how a model works, etc. I think it's still relevant, but probably not so much unless you really are a person developing those technologies and not just a mere user of them. But that third example I gave, which is the way you structure a problem, and then you find the appropriate methods and tools, and you can evaluate the results that you're coming back, etc. Those are obviously timed. So that's, I guess, in a more technical setting, that's maybe what corresponds to a durable skill beyond the general broader durable skills like communication and right. So I don't know what exactly that corresponds to on the learning side, but there's got to be some level of technical skills that are still mostly resilient to the way AI maybe is being used more and more. Right. So that's one thing. And like I said, hard for me to comment on those. But I will say about AI related skills though. I'll go back to the context, right? So the example I gave about the marketing class and all of that, because there's the other thing I get asked a lot is, how do I keep up with what's happening in AI? that in
Yeah.
itself has become a job. I mean, I
Yeah.
work in AI and I find it difficult to keep up
Yes.
with what's happening, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think, the average professional needs to read about AI every day, right? Because things might be changing on a day-to-day basis. But if you're, I don't know, 3 weeks late in using the latest release of whatever tool that you're using, that's fine. It's not the end of the world. I think that's probably, trying to keep up with it daily creates a lot of anxiety. I honestly unsubscribe from a lot of newsletters just because of, of that, overload. But what matters is what AI does in your own context. So I would spend a lot more of my time in using whatever tools are most commonly used among my colleagues, or what some newsletter about my profession is recommending. And that's spend time to actually use it in a workflow that I do, right? And I know in the community, the Slack community that you're running, you're very also encouraging about experimentation and sharing those experiments. I think that's what really matters. So I would spend more time there, kind of in that thinking and doing space, rather than reading and synthesizing what I'm reading state. Because the wavelength, I think that's most everybody needs to worry about, is not a daily or even weekly wavelength. I think it's a monthly wavelength. And as long as every month we're doing things that are a bit maybe different. We tried something, it stuck. We tried something, it didn't. And so we moved on. I think that's what we need to worry about, if anything.
It's very helpful. One of the things that I have started to think about a lot lately that it sounds like what you're saying, that this might be a way for us to think about it too. Most of the other tools that we use, you named the tools that are relevant to data science. Those are tools, many of them, that were built specifically for people who do that kind of work or something very similar. When you show up to an LLM, it is a blank piece of paper. It is a Word document that has zero content in it. It can be anything. And I think that there is, because of where we are, we're not in a place where we don't have very many robust, purpose-built tools for what we do. And I think this is true for lots of other careers. Or if they exist, they don't have a lot of market penetration. People don't have access to them. They haven't gotten used to them. And I do think this feeds into this sense of things moving so fast, is because people feel as though they have to keep up with what is AI writ large, because I need to understand it writ large to understand its application to my work, as opposed to just saying, is this application that I'm going to use at work? It's going to be the same application probably for a while. I really need to understand it really well, but I do not need to understand a lot of bigger picture things about AI. But I wonder if we are still in a place where it's hard to just filter down to that industry specific stuff right now, because there's just so much uncertainty. The tools are still early stages. I think you can tell me if that's fair, but they feel early stages to me still.
Yeah. And I think there's, one of the things that I've been thinking about, particularly with my colleagues at Harvard Data Science Review, is, what's a publications role? Right. So how can we, what I kept saying over the last, half hour or so is, context and, using it within your own environment, and all of that. But if it's, if the content that is being thrown at you, at, media, your newsletters, the Substack and the YouTube and videos and, the conferences, etc., they're mostly about, here's what this does, or this is, new and look how capable, etc. Then it's really up to an individual to, absorb all of it and then filter out things that are not relevant to their own context, and then, whatever is left, work with it. It's a lot to ask, from a person.
I agree.
So I think, we all should, and that's certainly one of the things I'm trying to think hard about, is how do we make that process easier for people? So it's not just another article or another video that we share with people, but it's really, when they have a question, I'm at work, I have a question and I'm trying to understand how I can use AI for a particular problem, or I have a meeting and I'd like to, contribute, but I don't know exactly some of the things, etc. Then someone should be there. Like not everyone has a personal consultant sitting across from their desk who can, with infinite wisdom. I mean, AI seems that way, but it's not, because, it also has a lot of other things. So can we kind of, narrow it down in a way that makes it very relevant, very direct for who you are and what you're trying to do?
That's interesting. So are you saying that the review is thinking about filling its role in that way, about being a mechanism or a tool or a resource that people could use to help with that kind of filtration, simplification, application work?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big task. So we've certainly been thinking about it, right? Because if you're an academic journal, there's a traditional, model that you go with, which brings all the credibility with it, of course.
Right.
It's peer reviewed and it's very rigorous, very selective and all of that, which has its function. But if we wanted to branch out from that, what does that branching out look like to bring all of this rigor and expertise closer to a broader, group? And I'm sure it's not only us thinking about it, but I think it would be great if maybe even within verticals, people try to work on that kind of thing. I mean, from being now, immersed in the AI and education communities is certainly something that I'm, thinking about, because I know for a fact, I've heard this over and over again. I mean, you said you met some teachers, right? So, firsthand, you might have some in your family and, or your colleagues. No one has the time to do all of this, in addition to a job that's already extremely, busy and taxing and tiring, right? So I think whatever we can do to make that process, the cognitive process of understanding, synthesizing, and then applying it in context, I think that will go a long way.
Can't help but agree. Okay. Everybody wants an AI prediction, so I'm going to ask it. I appreciate hearing about it from your particular vantage point. What is your prediction for what happens in AI and education over the next few years?
I mean, I think a lot of the productivity kind of workflow related applications will be quite mature. Some of the kinks will hopefully be worked out. The way it's, kind of integrates, are you throwing out an entire class of applications and bringing in AI fueled ones, or are you accelerating things by AI? So all of those types of questions that people are asking now, I think most of them will settle down. So, many of the systems, will be embedded with, AI capabilities. People will have reworked their, and the main workflows and all that. So it'll be a lot more, it'll probably look and feel a lot more like business as usual, rather than, the new technology, what do we do with it? Which is kind of what the feeling is now. I don't think it's going to take too long. So you said 2-3 years. I think that's a reasonable time frame. I'm not sure if my earlier comment about what we are teaching and and what students are learning, I'm not sure if that's going to be all in the clear. I think it'll feel calmer also in that front. I mean, I don't think jobs will be disrupted in such a major way over the next couple of years that universities will be irrelevant. I mean, certainly I don't subscribe to that, extreme scenario. But if in 2 to 3 years, we have revamped a lot of the curriculum and individual, syllabi with our courses across the board. I'm not just saying AI courses or AI fluency, or I'm saying all of the degree programs and whatever it is that you do. AI is infused. It's integral. It feels more business as usual. I mean, that might be happening in especially more applied areas. Like if you're studying architecture, or if you're studying engineering, certainly if you're studying data science, all of those probably are going to happen a bit quicker because there's more incentive, to do that. Maybe other professions or other degree programs might take a bit longer, but I'm hoping in 2 to 3 years, that contextual learning of AI is going to be a lot more common than it is now. It's not So I didn't predict a doom or major explosion of, AI is going to take over everything or whatever. So it's a more realistic take, probably what's going to happen, and it's probably a bit easier with the time frame that you gave. I mean, if you said 5 to 10 years, my short answer would have been probably I have no idea. I don't know.
Yeah. Completely fair. I appreciate that what you're describing sounds calmer, more settled, that we start to think of AI as a utility that runs a lot of other things in our lives and not a thing. Like I don't walk around thinking about electricity until we don't have it. And then it is the most important thing. And then right? It sounds like there is from what you're describing, that AI will become kind of part of the fabric. We still have to pay attention to it. Still, it is as important, but it may not be this kind of big, dominating topic that it is right now in quite the same way.
And I'm especially optimistic about what individuals are able to do. I mean, that I don't know if you'd agree with that, but a lot of the things that I think we enjoyed hearing actually came from individuals taking initiative to do things. I think organizational catch-up still needs to happen. Like, how do we govern this? What are the ethics? I mean, certainly there's a policy aspect, although that also, that is, there's obviously a lot more discussion on that now, which is good. Discussion needs to happen. But what is okay versus not okay, to do. So I think, so I don't want to, I'm not saying I'm not ignorant of all of those really important discussions that need to happen at the organizational level. But I think that individual initiative is just going to drive a lot of positive change, and organizational just needs to make sure that all of that is done in a responsible way. I mean, we are talking about children and young adults. It is an extremely, extremely sensitive part of our society and, our future. And so, it's really critical that we get, things right. But like I said, I think that, there's a lot of bottom up. There's definitely thinking and discussion, top at either the policy level or governance, discussions around responsible AI and ethics of, data and the privacy issues that come with that, et cetera. So I'm hoping those will converge, so that as people are, doing things, they're also provided with kind of safe environments in which to do those types of experimentation.
You've already touched on a few things, just 2 questions left. My second to last question here, we've already kind of touched on a few of these things. I'm going to ask it anyway, because there could be another dimension that you'd want to add. If somebody who's listening to this conversation is overwhelmed by the nonstop deluge of technical advances and political decrees about which models we can have access to, and AI economics news and general hype and doom cycles, what is your advice to them right now? How do they stay grounded and ready for what might happen, let's just say, in their career?
I mean, first of all, if someone's not working in AI, like that's not their field of work or profession, then I don't think this should be like a daily part of my routine. I think maybe it's weekly. I might subscribe to a couple newsletters, maybe something more macro, something that's maybe a bit more technical, and then something that's related to my specific role or industry. Maybe I read those on a weekly basis. If I miss a week, that's fine. I don't panic, right? And that probably gives me the base knowledge about what's happening, in AI. Kind of like what you would do to keep track of your, immediate environment, your town, like the community that you're part of, et cetera. And then, and I've said this, before, but I really do think it's critical. Whatever it is that you're learning, if something piques your interest, like you read the story, say, okay, this could apply to my, classroom, or I have the exact same challenge, then, you have to roll up your sleeves. I mean, unless that rolling up happens, I don't think, people can understand the power and also the limitations or the risks of, using AI. So that initial phase of, the prompting and how to say it and to make, to get AI do what you want it to do, etc. I think, that obviously is becoming a lot more taken for granted now. A lot of people feel comfortable, with that. But the next step is a bit harder. And I'm not, when I say harder, it's not like technically harder because we're still talking about a fairly easy task for even non-technical people. I'm not saying, go do vibe coding and then build your own application. That's not, that's not the level. Although if you're feeling like that, absolutely do it. I mean, because it'll show you a lot of things that you wouldn't have otherwise, be exposed to. But find that that's, next level of tinkering with AI is absolutely what needs to happen. Because as I said, if you don't do it now and next month and 3 months from now and 6 months from now, and the train is moving, it's just becoming harder and harder to catch up with it. As long as you're on the train, I mean, because the train might slow down, it might speed up. Maybe you find yourself in kind of a back car and all that. That's fine. I mean, you can always catch up. But people need to be doing things right now. If they're not, that would be my real. Otherwise, what happens today with this tool or that tool or what this new release does, what the benchmarks say about image generation or what, critical, problem solving or whatever. I mean, those are much less significant.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Last question. I always give a question from a person that I've speaking with recently. And the one today comes from Brenda Boyd. So her question is, how do you define quality in your work?
I mean, I think when you do something, of course, especially if something that you put a lot of effort and time into, you would like to think that it's either not only is the right thing to do, but it's also done in the right way, which probably is what we could say is, quality, quality is. But I think the real test is how people perceive it. Right. So if a product is being adopted by its intended audience, if a conference is well attended by people that it's supposed to attract, so whatever it is, I mean, if you're finding kind of the reaction you think you deserve, then probably you can feel more confident that you've done a quality job. If it's not there, it might still be a good product or offering or service or whatever whatever it might be, but it probably is missing a few things that basically prevent people from just taking that leap. So I'd rather have other people assess what that is, because I know, having worked in data science, I also know quite a bit about the biases that humans have.
So many. I really appreciate this conversation. It's been such a pleasure having you on, Hamit. Thank you so much for joining the show.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks so much, Jason.
That's a wrap on this episode. If you found this useful, please subscribe and share it with a fellow learning professional. It's the best way to help others find the show. And if you want to keep the conversation going, we have 2 ways to do it. We have a monthly online AI forum for learning professionals. We also have a Slack community by the same name, totally dedicated to learning professionals. These are great places to meet more people who do the kinds of things that we do and make sense of the world that we're in and what's coming together. You can find the links in the show notes, or you can reach out directly to us at podcast@jackrabbitlx.com. See you next time.